Testing. All right. Welcome to Off Color Live. Ayo. All right. First of all, I'd like to give a couple of quick shout outs. Number one to Jeanette Hollowell. It's an original song that she wrote. She'll be performing on May 18th at the Rossonian at 11 a.m. during the 5 Points Jazz Festival. Let's give it up. What? All right. So listen up, fam. We good? How's the music? All right. So real quick, I want to just welcome everyone here. This is the Off Color Podcast Live. So I'm your host, Rebecca Henderson, a.k.a. the Tan Tigress. If you're not familiar with my work, you about to be. Okay, so we are going to get it popping. I just want to make a quick shout out. So if you're not familiar with the Off Color Podcast, we've been hosting uncomfortable conversations about race since 2017. We always honor the ancestor, Dr. Gregory Diggs. He is with us in spirit, and we always go forward with the idea and that we are here to educate, we are here to empower, and we are here to unite. Okay? So that's part of the off-color mission. All right? Another thing, we like to know the words, give you guys definitions. If you have questions, this is the place for it, and we will help you to understand what is going on in your community. Okay. Wait, can I do my Cardi B impersonation? Okay. It's good. It's okay. All right. So before we get into it, I would like to bring up, I have a couple of guests. And number one, Jeanette Hollowell, what you doing sitting over there, girlfriend? It's your seat.
And then you were like, no, James.
No, sit down. So I'd like to give a shout out to my homegirl, Danette.
Hi.
Danette Hollowell is my sister from another mister. I'm confident she will never do 23andMe due to not having the government own her DNA.
It's true story. We have lots of arguments about conspiracy theories.
That's part of our jam. That's part of our jam.
Friendship.
Yeah. And so I like it, but I'm very confident that Danette and I are actually blood relatives.
I would love to know what my lineage is if I didn't have to sign over my rights to my DNA as a black woman in America. I don't see what's so hard about it. They should be giving those DNA tests free to every black person in America, period. They should just give them to them free.
Radical.
Free.
Like
FREE, and I own the rights.
Yeah. And I own the rights. That's part of my jam, too. All right. So I would also like to bring up, we have a few guests today. And so we have actually two. So I would like to call up to the stage Monty Taj. Hey. So I just want to be very clear that Monty Taj is somewhat of a newcomer to Denver. She's been here about 2 years. She is host of the podcast Comfortably Excluded. So subscribe to that. Put that shit on your iTunes. Wait, that's where it is, right? Okay, just check it. Okay, so that's number one. And number two, I'd like to bring to the stage longtime community activist, powerhouse, independent media, son of Denver, brother Jeff!
Who am I?
Yeah. Chocolate chai.
Chocolate chai.
That sounds good. I like it. I like it so much.
It's my new favorite song.
All right, so welcome. Yeah. Welcome, fam. I'm so excited to have you guys here. I wanted to just do a quick check-in. If there's something I missed in your bio, I would like you guys to just include it real quick before we get into it, because we be getting into it on this show. Okay? All right. So go ahead, Monty.
Okay. Well, yes, I am the host and creator of Comfortably Excluded podcast. And I love to tell people that it essentially is a platform for people and creatives, entrepreneurs of color, to just get their own narratives. as a person who has been a person of color my whole life, obviously, and have had a lot of people kind of tell my story for me, I got sick of it at a very early age and just noticed a lot of other people of color tired of being painted into these boxes that we never signed up for. So I love to give my podcast is a space and a platform for other creatives to just take back their narratives, because it ain't enough of us telling our own stories for the love of God. It really isn't. So yeah, that's what Comfortably Excluded is about. Embracing the comfort of being excluded. Sometimes you don't want to be included.
Brother Jeff?
I think she said it all. If you hear any beeping, that's my ankle monitor because I'm on probation. So I'm still running. So you might hear the beep close, you might hear it far away, but I'm constantly running. So I'm happy to be here. And shout out to Rebecca and the whole crew for putting this together. We should give them a round of applause. And then I also want to say to the owners or proprietors, whoever put this wonderful facility together, it feels very comfortable. I mean, I've never come to a place where they're greeting you with a handshake. They're usually following me around. So change done come.
So I'd like to give a quick shout out to the venue. We are at Denver, 3254 Navajo Street, Denver, Colorado. And I just want to drop a quick, because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, why are you even doing it over there? Okay? And the real reason I always keep it extra real is that Danette and my homegirl Leah, Ewo, La Loba, mi hermana. So we came into this restaurant after doing a screening of my film, All Mixed Up, Our Changing Racial Identities. If you have questions about that, I'll hit you up later. But we came here to this spot. I had never been here. And let's just keep it real. I don't always feel super comfortable in Denver, Colorado.
Good Lord.
Certainly not
You're on the
with
north
my
side,
black friends.
and it was all white folks in here.
It was all white people.
We rolled up.
We rolled up, and I felt like we got excellent service. We got a lot of attention. We felt good and comfortable and welcomed, and that is not always an experience that people have here in Denver, and I want to be very clear about that. And that happened here, and that's why this is our first stop. Okay?
Right on.
Like we was in here
Really
singing Queen. They gave us the microphone. Me and Rebecca was fighting over who knew the words. And Mamma Mia, Mamma Mia,
Mamma Mia, let me go.
No. We was in here doing it. Yeah, we were all friends.
It's about to get cracking up in
I was
here.
about to say, like, should we do Joni back on?
Yeah, we was in here doing it.
We can't afford the licensing for that.
We can only give you 2 bars.
Although I'm as racially ambiguous as Rami Malek, so what up? All right, so I just wanted to give a big shout out to there. If you guys haven't had your brunch, if you haven't had your mimosas, make sure you can do that. We have a little menu for you so you can get into that. All right, so you ready, fam? That, by the way, the correct response to that is, I was born ready. Are you ready, fam?
I was born ready.
I was born by a river in a little tent.
All right, so we are going to get into it. We do have a somewhat of a schedule, but we never stick to it because this shit is run by black people and stuff. Okay, so we are going to start with, I want to talk about Denver. So I'm just going to give a quick, brief introduction of myself. I call myself the Tan Tigress because my brother-in-law one time said to me, I said, oh, I'm like a Black Panther. He was like, more like a Tan Tigress. And I took it, and I was like, word. What I like in melanin, I make up in militant.
All right, work it.
Okay? So that's number one. I do a lot of different things. I'm hanging out. I'm a librarian. I'm a podcaster. I'm a filmmaker, yada, yada, yada. But my main goal is to highlight amazing things that people are doing in the community. And I was also very intentional about my guests that I selected today because I want to talk about what it means to be a good neighbor and what it means to be a person of color living in Denver, Colorado. Okay? All right. So I want to welcome Monty and Brother Jeff.
Right on.
So excited to be here.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you guys about your experience. So for me, I moved to Denver in 2008. And when I got here, I was like, where are the black people? I feel like that's a legitimate question. Now I want to ask you, Monty, because you're a transplant, as they call us.
I am a transplant. I moved to Denver about 2 years ago. My 2-year anniversary was just last week.
All right.
And I'm from a small town outside of D.C. called Richmond, Virginia. Yeah. Oh,
What?
see, somebody knows.
Richmond.
He said, no, I'm from Aurora. I'm from like Aurora. Shout out to Aurora.
A couple people know what and where that is. But yeah, so as you can imagine, like the area I grew in was very mixed. So it was, and I've moved around since going to college and in different states. But Denver is a whole different beast, is what I tell people. It's definitely a different beast. Yeah, it's even a different type of white. I've even had white friends come out to visit, and they go, I don't know these people. And I only think it's because the culture isn't very, different cultures aren't very prominent here. It's more of a kind of, we know things happen in the past, but we kind of want to just live in the blinded future. You know what I mean? And
Colorblind.
Yeah.
Yo,
Yeah.
PSA,
So,
don't say you're colorblind. White people, that's ignorant, and you need to stop saying that.
yeah, but I will say the birth of my podcast actually came from living in Denver. I had been working on it for 2 years prior to launching, and something about Denver really said, now's the time. You got to do this. If you're going to do this platform, you got to do it right now in this space, because I always felt, anyway, growing up outside of D.C., yeah, like, there are a lot of us we militant as hell. I mean, Richmond, Virginia is the capital of the South, still to this day. It is known as the capital of the South. That is my hometown, and it cracks me up because it's predominantly African Americans that are there, a lot of Hispanics, Puerto Ricans, like things like that, and yet it is still very heavily with this very Southern, like, Confederate cloud over it. And yet I still was able to grow up with this strong pride, this very prominent, being able to see people like me, and we move businesses and things like that. So when I came out here, and I'm like, okay, Manifest Destiny brought everyone out here, all different walks of life, and from really learning about the history of Denver and seeing, like, this place was as much like the South, built on the backs of a lot of indigenous and black people. But yet I moved here 2 years ago, and I wouldn't have never known they ever fucking existed here. Sorry for cursing.
Never apologize.
Yeah, so that really made me go, because I get all this talk from the East Coast, and I've lived all across the East Coast. So I get all everyone's like, what are you doing out here? There ain't no black people, ain't no people of color. And I'm like, I am running to all these different people every single day. And it's like, no, we've been here, we are here, and we need to be heard. So I noticed that a lot of my following and a lot of my listeners are from the East Coast and, like, way down in the South. So I was like, I'm gonna make these people understand that Denver is diverse. We may not be able to see it initially, but it's so diverse, and it is begging for this explosion of culture to just be noticed here. And any way I can help, that's what I want. I'm also in love with Brother Jeff.
So, Brother Jeff, I wanted you to just talk a little bit about your background.
My background?
You heard me.
Well, it's interesting you say my background because I'm black, but my mother was Negro, my grandmother was colored, my children African American. They went off to college and said they were Greek. So it all kind of changes up, you know. We're fluid, but it is difficult to come into this environment and fit in. Because usually when I travel anywhere, I say I'm from DC, they say, oh, Chocolate City? I'm like, no, Denver, Colorado. And they're like, there's black folks in Denver? I'm like, yes, there used to be. And the difference is the first time I went to Washington, D.C., I had never seen that many black people in one place at one time ever.
It is known as the Chocolate City for a reason.
But that was the 80s, because now when I went back like into Georgetown and all that area, it looks just like this. So what I'm seeing across the planet is this thing called gentrification. And it seems like, and you may not know it, you all may not know it, but it seems like white folks have a game plan that they stick to, because you just cannot have the same outcome everywhere you go. This feels exactly like the old Biscuit Mall down in Cape Town, South Africa, when I'm in South Africa and I seen Gympie Street and all those black folks get moved out into trailers way out somewhere else. And then you start getting this influx of what they call creatives and entrepreneurs and hipsters and all. So I'm just getting used to white folks, because I never grew up around them. Can I say that? Yes. I'm not saying it's a good... I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying when you got here, the same way Washington, D.C. is the way Park Hill was in Colorado. Colorado has always had 3% black folks, but I grew up in a community that was like 98% black everywhere. The businesses were black. You know, Welton Street was not the only black center. 5 Points was not the only black center. Park Hill was black. Montbello became black. Black folks were all up and down Montview. And I asked myself, where did they go? How did this happen? And I got some thoughts about that. I'll stop right now, but I'm telling you, what you're seeing here is what you're seeing in Harlem. It's what you're seeing in California. It's what you're seeing in Boston. It's what you're seeing all over the planet. And there's a plan, but we are not necessarily privy to it, but we're experiencing it. And it's these platforms that kind of give us an opportunity to say the same thing that's happening there is happening here, and we need to be aware of that.
Yes. Shouts out to there.
And here.
Because we there. I feel bad because I feel like everybody don't have a microphone. Does that one work?
Me and James understand that we're sharing if we have something to say.
We have an agreement.
This is about unity, people. This is about Ebony Ivory.
UNITY. You know, we're actually singing that at Carrie Joy and Candy DeBacca's thing on the 28th.
Oh snap! We're gonna do shout outs at the end.
Unity. I'm actually singing that song. UNITY.
That's my brother's name.
We're gonna be at.
Jeanette, who's the GOAT? Who's the hip hop GOAT female? Woman. Top of the line.
MC
period.
Light. Oh no.
I was gonna say.
Okay.
I'm a slave. I'm a slave.
I mean,
I'm a slave to the
goat?
rhythm.
The GOAT. Woman.
I really like Little Kim. I know she's
All
a
right.
hot mess.
I won't argue.
Know it's gone into another
won't
direction, but
I'm
like
the
that's my
light.
girl. Like that was my original. I was like, she is so tight. I was like 15, and my dad. I put one of those songs on my pager.
On
my
your pager.
My beeper.
My beeper song was that "Come Here, Biatch" song, or no, yeah, like "Let's Fight" or something.
I'm a
like
little
that.
hood and I live for
Yes.
Trina, the Diamond
I was
Princess.
like,
That was
she
my
is-
queen, for
Oh,
sure.
so that's mine. That's
Mine is I'm the light. LYLYTE.
All right.
I mean,
The light.
The light.
I'm
She
the
was
light.
the light. She is still the
I have
light.
a picture with MC Light.
Yeah, she dope. Oh, shut up.
She's
All right.
dope.
I'm gonna stay focused.
Yes.
Stay focused.
Okay, I'm on it. I like that question. I wasn't ready for it. So in case you guys don't know, Brother Jeff has a show on Facebook every day at 2 o'clock called 30 Minutes with Brother Jeff.
Ain't never been 30 minutes.
It has never been no 30 minutes.
It's aspirational.
But I've been on it, and he got me, he made me choke. You made me choke because I thought you were gonna ask me about who is my GOAT of like hip hop, and I'm all Biggie because I'm East Coast, right? And then I wasn't ready for the question you asked.
Come on.
Apologies.
Let's go.
All right. So I want to ask a question, and this is also for Danette. Danette, you are not a Denver quote unquote native.
True story. No. Although I've been here long enough that when I tell people I'm from California, people in Denver are quick to remind me that I've been here and that they claim me and that I can no longer claim Cali.
Yeah,
They're
you
like,
Denver.
whatever,
You Denver, you
you
Denver.
live here now. I'm a
What's like the
military brat.
cutoff?
So before I found my way to Colorado, I lived in Japan, Hawaii, San Diego, San Francisco, and Louisiana. So yes,
You
I live
military?
here in Denver. I make friends pretty easily. So there are people who remember me here in Denver from 13, 14, and remember me from 20. And I won't age myself, but everybody thinks they grew up with me because I was a military brat, and as opposed to, you know, some of us have struggles moving around, I didn't. So I made friends everywhere. So I have like childhood friends in Japan, childhood friends in Hawaii, childhood friends in California, childhood friends here in Denver. But I've been in Denver the longest at this point. So Denver's my home for sure.
Word. All right, so I want to talk. I have some questions I kind of like to go through for you, but I want to know, Monty, can you just talk a little bit about what it was like for you when you first moved here to Denver? Like, can you just talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so I will say that before moving to Denver, I used to visit quite a bit. And I know that kind of like jars people. They're just like, well, why were you so shocked when you moved here? I will always tell you, visiting a place versus living in a place is very different. I had friends on the East Coast. I mean, I know a lot of you probably know at least 5 or 6 people from Virginia, because that seems to be the carryover. This seems to be the place that we go to. And it's because, to be honest with you, this city is a lot like a lot of towns in Virginia. We are a very, my hometown, there's a giant river that runs through it. The mountains are about a 30, 40-minute drive outside of town. So we have body of water. That's the only difference really between like Denver and Richmond, Virginia, and the fact that we have a lot more minorities. We're in Richmond,
Ain't nothing
Virginia.
minor about our
Nothing
shit.
minor
Sorry, y'all.
about it, because
that's my PSA. That's my
Yeah.
PSA. We're not using that language anymore. FYI, minorities, because it's a language of deficit.
Exactly, especially when we make up the majority, especially in my hometown. And it was always very interesting to watch as far as like when they come to like the hipster culture. I honestly feel like my hometown bred it, birthed it, spread it around. The only difference is where I'm from, we don't look at it as being hipster. Black, white, Hispanic, we're all that type. That's just a little over-aware of what's going on and how we can kind of help progress it. But anyway, I visit here a lot because I'm hood as fuck, but I love the outdoors.
Say that part again. You're what?
I'm hood as fuck.
All right.
But I love the outdoors. Like, if you follow my Instagram, you will see me randomly snowboarding on one day and then dropping it real high, real low to the city girls in the club the next.
All right.
That's just who I am. So I always wanted to live in a city where I had the best of both worlds. And because I visited Denver so much, I assumed like, oh, every time I visited it was great. But I never really put into perspective that every time I visited, how many times did you really interact or see people of color? Like how active are they in the city? How predominant? Do you see them a lot? You know, things like that. That was all I didn't really take into consideration. I just saw, you know, I visit all the time and it's awesome and everyone's so nice and so sweet and blah, 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 and it's great and I want to be hood as fuck in the mountains and I got me a new boy and he down, so here we go. And
Yeah.
And then I moved here and I lived here, and it was about 3 months in that I realized, wow, visiting Denver was a lot different than living. For one, I don't understand how y'all don't have black beauty supply stores on every fucking corner.
SLR, is it? On Colorado?
You see what I'm saying? Like, everybody knows the same, like, 4 places
Colorado
here.
Boulevard.
I had to get these Senegalese twists off the internet.
Exactly. I have to bat hair off the internet. I've never really had to experience that before. So there were a lot of changes that I had to adapt to, and then it actually really made me realize that I could either conform and try to make the masses feel comfortable, or I could just keep being myself, and you with it, and if you not, then fuck yourself.
That's how we got to be friends.
So yeah, it was very different. It was a culture shock, and I've lived in New York, Georgia, Texas, Baltimore, a lot of different areas, and coming here for some reason was just like, this is the first time in my life that I feel like, oh my God, I am far away from home. Where the hell is my mother?
Wow. But see, you're in a moment in time because I want to take you back. And again, some of this I'm going to share is kind of family business in an open public setting. But I'm going to say it and I'm going to share it. Prior to your arrival, you've got to remember when I say that we owned entire plots of land,
and
businesses,
that's what I've learned
cetera.
recently.
But that was yesterday. That was like in the past. So if you go down Colfax and you see that Hunter's Plaza, this was a woman by the name of Miss Hughes. She was one of the most profound black business women, period, anywhere that you would find. She would rival, and I heard this out of Mr. Charles Cousin's mouth himself, that she was a more profound businesswoman than actually he was. She came up during a time where women had to get permission from their husbands to open up a bank account. And that's just not too far away. This woman had the largest black hair care product store this side of the Mississippi. She was the first to have black hair care and stylists inside of Buckingham Square. She was the first to have hair care inside of Safeway and King Soopers. She was the first to have hair care inside of the prison industrial complex. And she would always lament to me, Brother Jeff, what's wrong with our people? Because she wanted to pass that legacy of business on specifically to black people as the Asian community began to gobble up the black hair care industry. So you might buy a product from a black business, but it's still manufactured, distributed, and owned and ran by the Asian community. That hair we're buying, we're not getting that anywhere from our community. Now, to close this story, you will see a half block of property on Colfax in the Hunter's Plaza. One generation later, all of that wealth, that business, that equity, the next generation either stumbled through that crack cocaine period, which now that it's an opium epidemic, it's a health kind of hazard because it's impacting white folks. But when we were dealing with crack, we were criminalized, we were demonized, we were, put in a totally different situation. So when you come into the Mile High Income City, which I call it, every piece of property that we have, we've either had it foreclosed on or it's being sold off. And so when you see that Hunter's Plaza, it's been sold off, next generation, to developers outside of our community. And when you look inside of our communities, everyone that seems to be moving in, I know that there are black and brown people who are looking for homes and real estate, but every time that for sale sign comes down, it's a white family that goes into those buildings. And if you don't think that the continuation of separation and all of that is taking place, it is absolutely taking place, particularly here in Colorado, where this side of the Mississippi will be more racist than the South. You will notice that, but it's inside of policy. It's inside of legislation. It's inside of access. So they won't call you a nigga to your face, but they won't give you a loan or a job, or they won't give you access, or they'll make sure their children are in special schools away from those other kids. And it's not all white folks, but it's to the point where they can identify with that as a collective group. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and can I piggyback off the access piece? The access piece is huge because even Cousins, who, I don't know if people know who Cousins was, but he was a major land and business owner here in Denver, Colorado, a black man. And he even complained of his ability to get access to loans to redevelop the property. So my issue with gentrification is not so much, hey, what are you so mad about? They're coming in, they're fixing the buildings up, it looks so nice. It's the audacity that these people believe that for the last 30 years, there were no people of color who wanted to do the same thing. You think people were sitting in their community for 30 and 40 years and didn't want to reinvent themselves, didn't want to refurbish, didn't want to develop their own property? That's a farce. And you don't deserve to have any people of color friends if that's what you believe a community of color was doing, was sitting there and just waiting for somebody else to come and develop the land. They were applying for the loans. They were applying for those loans. And they were denied and denied and denied. So.
And that's why voices like ours need to be heard. And instead of going, because there was a period in time where I was like, all right, I need to pack up, move out, because this is not for me. But then I realized that if I pack up and leave, okay, then that's one less voice being heard in this area. And it actually took I actually took this past February and I sat down because it was Black History Month, because you know they give us that little month, even though I take it all
every
year.
Day in our house.
Exactly.
Every
even though I
day
take
in
it
our
all
house.
year. But I really sat down this past February and I really concentrated on the history of Denver. History of Denver. And it was just in that I realized, like, that there were Black people that carved this space out of mountain caves. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that was what blew me. And it was like this whole world opened up to me. And it was like, and I think that's where Manifest Destiny really played an effect. It was like, yeah, bitch, why are you so shocked? Like, this land was inhabited by the rejects, the freed, the enslaved, the criminal. So, of course, these people came over here looking for a free and safe area. And the indigenous people alone, like, this was the best. They like, fine, we can't have a coast. You know, the East Coast, we gonna fleet over this way. And, and it's just, like, really researching the amount of people of color that really built up this city, and to see that how it is just like their whole history is being erased, made me want to stay and really go, all right, the platform needs to happen. Like, we got to make this happen.
And there's a pattern. If you look at that pattern, like, for example, when I came here, I don't know what they call this neighborhood. Some say it's called High-Low. I'm not sure what they...
You know they give it their own name.
But it was
North Side.
But it was always
North
like...
Side.
You know they give their own names.
It was interesting just coming here, because you'll see this same pattern, this same blueprint is being superimposed into 5 Points. The same absolute situation.
Do you guys know about 5 Points? You ever heard of that neighborhood?
But when I
What
tell
do they
you...
call it now? Stand by. I'm kind of salty about this shit.
We're fighting the 5 points.
And I cried heavily, literally, not figuratively, when I was reading the history
Welton
of 5
Street
Point.
corridor?
They would, I mean, but power comes in and, of course, changes the name of anything. It's like, what's your name? Shaniqua. Okay, can I call you Sally? You know what I mean? This is an innate power. This is an innate power piece where you start to rename and you reclaim certain things. But the point I was making, this being the north side, I'm over here, I'm 5 minutes away from what's known as 5 Points, which includes what they call Lodo, which includes what they call Rhino, which includes what they call Curtis Park, etc. And I'm looking, and there's always remnants of resistance, because I'm walking down a street where I had to park several blocks away because they're building 5,000 units in 11 parking spaces. This is going to be a problem. I see a Julie Gonzalez sign in the window. I see an Occupy sign, and I'm saying there's always resistance that is taking place. And so the history is there. How many of you have been to Cherry Creek Mall? Anybody know about Cherry Creek?
Yes.
You see how that looks?
Oppressive as hell.
How many of you know that used to be a historic black community?
Negative.
So if
Clara Brown.
Wait, what?
Black folks were in Cherry Creek before they were in 5 Points. This is history. And so when you come down 5 Points today and you see the transference of property or the rebuilding, and sure, there's some black folks that still own property or they're buying in, etc. What you're going to start seeing is plaques on the walls that give you an indication that blacks were there. But at the end of the day, 20 years from now, Cherry Creek, 5 Points, and all these areas will look the same, and no one will even have an understanding that black folks were there unless they learn about it during Black History Month in a school that won't have black kids in the neighborhood school.
Shit.
I'm about to cry.
No,
Hey,
that's
the
fine.
But there's hope. There's hope. There's hope.
hope.
That Julie Gonzalez sign, that
Ayo.
Occupy sign, the things that we're doing on the podcast, folks who get it. See, white folks sometimes they get in a box and they think we're talking about all of you, but more white folks are suffering under these crazy policies than other folks as well. When you look at this urban camping ban and you look at homeless and you look at people who are panhandling out on these streets in 5 Points, it used to be a lot of black folks, but now you're seeing the struggles and the denial of white folks to white folks right here in this city as well. So don't clap and think that because you can afford a house now in a gentrified area, it doesn't mean that your neighborhood's going to not become an Airbnb destination stop to where you can't even afford to live in the neighborhood that you came in because it was affordable, because gentrification will get you too. It's just going to get you last when it just already got us. That's the working of gentrification.
Hello.
Them's the facts.
That's it.
Them's the facts. And so one of the things I wanted to get into, though, before we get into my pop culture segment, because it's hilarious, but I want to talk about what it means. So I want to shout out White James for a moment, if you don't mind, White James. I know you mixing and shit, but White James and I have a similar experience. We're from the East Coast. We're from New York. We lived in Oakland. We moved here, and I just want to talk about how to be a good neighbor in gentrification. Because I'm going to be real, okay? I'm married up, y'all. I'm married up.
Me too.
Shout out to Ken.
Shout out to Ken.
Ken's like,
That's my
what up?
that's my
He's
Ja-
like,
that's
sure,
my
she
Jamaican
married up.
Jewish Scandinavian husband. People don't know about him. He incognito. But I want to say though that I feel like we try to be good neighbors and we have failed because we live in a community called Stapleton. I don't know if y'all people know about Stapleton, named after a mayor in the KKK, yada, yada, yada. But I'm saying, like, I feel slightly less guilty because my house is new, right? Like, I don't feel like I pushed anybody out in my neighborhood because there was nothing there before. But we're still part of the gentrification. We're still part of that. And I acknowledge that. But I want to know, how can we be good neighbors? And that's my question for you, Brother Jeff. That's my question for you, Danette. That's my question for you, White James, who moved to Aurora and can't be on my show no more because he in school. Once a month.
Unrelated to the topic, but yeah.
Reparations.
You're putting it to me first? I don't know. I think I'm the last person who can answer that question. It's something that I think about a lot. And again, it's similar to, I think, what Jeff was saying just a minute ago, where you, day to day, you try to do the right thing and you try to be good to people and respectful to people. But I know that on the historical curve, there's no other way to categorize me. I'm absolutely a gentrifier where I live. So yeah, I don't know if I don't think I have the answer to that question. I think Jeff or Danette would be the better folks to answer that.
And that's what being a good white person looks like.
Say that honesty with everything. I appreciate that honesty,
James.
white boy. I appreciate it.
Shout out
like
to James.
just so much.
It's fine. I lived in 5 Points for 15 years until I was gentrified out. And by gentrified out, I mean I got a notice on my door that said 30 days, you got to get out. Here's $1,200. Figure it out. So in the same building, I lived in 5 Points for 15 years, but I lived in the same townhouse with my 2 children for 11 of those 15 years. And we had 30 days to kind of figure it out. So I do recall 2 neighbors in the 5 Points area who were good neighbors, as in I lived in a row of townhouses that had been low income for quite some time, as in what you can pay kind of housing that doesn't really exist in 5 Points anymore, but it did at the time. And I had some older neighbors, I had some younger neighbors, but my older neighbors were like old gangsters, like old pimps, old numbers runners. They would be in their 70s having fights in the yard. Somebody would go down
Sounds
in the
like
yard.
home.
They would stay down. You would kind of go check their pulse. It was good. I appreciated the neighbors. They were excited, sort of hipster white kids, musicians who had seen me perform a few places. They would check in with me frequently as to whether or not they should call the police. And I thought that was being a good neighbor. And I lived like right on the 5 points. Like 5 points is 5 points, not because we just named it 5 points, but because there's a point where 5 streets meet, right at 27th and Welton. 5 streets meet at one point. And I would imagine it had a lot to do with the fact that black people had to sort of make their own roads and own streets, and sort of make their own way in that part of the community without a lot of assistance and help from the white community. But 5 points is 5 points because there's 5 streets in me. I lived a block away from this point, so it was pretty lively in general. And just having 2 white neighbors who were also musicians, who knew me through the artist community, who would check in with me frequently before calling the police, before turning into a parking lot patty, before arguing with an elderly black person about a parking spot. They would actually message me. And so I would challenge a lot of the white people who move into these new communities to get to know, and maybe you don't always agree, and maybe you don't always get along with your neighbors, but get to know your neighbors, because you might have an advocate like myself who would say, oh no, sister so-and-so is just over there tripping with her brother, and they do that every weekend.
Please don't give that entertainment out of the neighborhood. We need that.
They get to playing cards, and they argue, and somebody gets put out, and that's okay. And everybody's okay. The police don't need to be involved. So I think that's part of being a good neighbor, is checking yourself and communicating with your community before you call the police. I would say that's a good neighbor.
Yo, that's real talk.
Yeah.
Please consult your black friends before calling the neighbors. Just saying. That was the PSA right there.
I love it.
Because they came in. There was an elderly woman. She was in her 80s. She had lived in 5 points on this corner for like 35 years. And they started doing all those regulations around parking and what side you could park on and who could park. And they started putting cones even regarding the construction. And she was not going to conform. She had parked in this spot for some 15, 20 years, and she wasn't, you don't need to call the police for that.
No. Now, Brother Jeff, I want you to talk about it as an old-timey.
Wait, hold on. Let me
Monty about to drop it like
I would say, in terms of good neighbors, again, when I walked into this facility,
yes.
when I walked into this facility, I was greeted as an individual, potential customer, but there was a feeling of, I want to know who you are. I want to build a relationship. So when you talk about neighbors and neighborhoods, it's based on relationships. If you would not call the police on your nephew or your cousin or your family member, but you would call the police on someone that doesn't look like you, that are out of relationship with you under the very same circumstances, then you need to question what type of neighbor you're being. And there's also a fundamental truth that I think people should understand, which goes like this. If you don't understand white supremacy, everything else will just confuse you.
Stand by. May I?
Yeah.
May I?
Yes, you may.
May I?
Yes, you
so
may.
that is
Can
one
I
of our
kick it?
things. Yes, you
can. Can I kick it? Yes, you can.
So I want to be very clear. When we talk about these words, this was Dr. Diggs' thing, and he imparted it unto me. When people hear the term white supremacy, they're thinking, oh, that's not me, that's the KKK, that's XYZ, that's some Nazis, No, we're talking about an ideology. We're talking about a myth, okay? So when you have that feeling like, but I'm not like that, I'm a good white person, yes, you might be. I can't guarantee that. You're going to have to meet with me later.
We're going to run through your resume.
But what we're trying to do, at least what I'm trying to do, and nobody needs to sign on to this, but what I'm trying to do is I am trying to let people know that we do, in fact, have more in common than we do have different. Okay? That's real. And so when we're talking about white supremacy, we're talking about a myth. We're talking about an ideology. And I need y'all to get educated on that. You can go ahead and Google it. Okay?
Well, I mean, in terms of a good neighbor in consciousness, I would wake up every day. Like, for example, if I'm buying a house that's under market in a emerging neighborhood, etc.
Lord.
Am I asking myself the right questions? Why is this property undervalued? When I come into contact with something, am I asking myself, how am I in possession of somebody else's stuff?
I have a question for you, though. But does that mean you shouldn't buy that house?
Well, it depends on your level of consciousness. Like, for example, if I know I'm buying your stuff at your detriment, then maybe I might use my privilege somewhere else.
Or if I'm gonna buy and then be angry that I see like black men standing on the corner down the street and call the police every night.
Or if I'm gonna get involved with urban living but somehow can't stand that jazz is being played downstairs on the street that has a historic jazz tradition, maybe you should not purchase in that environment. But you have to remember, in terms of white supremacy, this isn't just about the average Joe or Jane purchasing a piece of property. This is about policy making it possible for a group or collective of Joes or Janes to occupy something that didn't belong to them, and to feel good and to sleep at night knowing that you annihilated the Native Americans of this particular land and can somehow say, this is my home. You can sleep through that. It's understanding gentrification plays into federal housing laws where GIs were not given access to homes and communities if they were black, but the white GIs were. So if you're talking about home ownership and you start looking at these types of patterns and you're saying, I'm benefiting from these patterns, for example, we begin to play Monopoly and we give everybody an equal distribution of wealth, but then we take everybody else's of colors wealth and distribute it amongst the white players, and then go and buy not only Park Place, but go over there to Mediterranean Avenue and that little purple part where nobody wanted. Now because
Baltimore!
now that you got all the property, you're gonna put a hotel over there, and every time a person of color rolls the dice, they land on your property and get sent right to jail. Understanding these policies is making a good neighbor, and then advocating and asking those who can pull the levers, why is that? Because they won't listen to us, but they might listen to you if you ask the right questions. And there's some questions out there that need to be asked.
Amen. Yeah, man. I want to get a quick. Oh, snap. All right.
Question, I can't wait.
I want to give it up, though, because honestly, I want to be real here right now. Dr. Gregory Diggs, if you don't know who he is, you can go ahead and Google it, but his brother is in the house today. And that is Brian Diggs. Brian.
Is Becky a white supremacist?
Is Aunt Becky.
Ooh, he all ready for pop culture. He ready. He ready.
Is that like a yes or no question?
He ready to move.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
Even
That's
though
what
Aunt
movement
Becky
is.
has biracial nieces and nephews, works with a couple nice black ladies at her job. They get along at lunch.
No. I would much rather see my white underdeveloped as far as academics go daughters into that university before any black, indigenous, Asian, Hispanic, any of them. I'd rather see my daughters who don't give two fucks about their education in those spots versus a well-deserved person of color, or even, even low-income white child who work their ass off, because there are a lot of people fail to forget that yes, white privilege and white supremacy exists, but there are a lot of white people with privilege that, yeah, it's a privilege, but they don't get as far as a lot of their white counterparts do. So a lot of them also worked pretty hard for these positions, but Aunt Becky said, no, I'd rather my white, pure white, good American, Christian daughters get into the school. Both of them have said on previous occasions on the internet how much they hate school. They don't care to be there. But I'd rather them take the spots of children who really deserve it. So absolutely, I think so, personally.
And so when you say white supremacy and you're thinking about better than, are you better than? And if you are, do you have access to certain resources because you are dealing with some others that have lack or deficit? So when we start talking about capital and we start talking about access, listen to what one of those parents said while pulling the levers unjustly to make sure their child could get into a facility.
Stand by.
He must never know. So here's the most insidious part of that. Here you have a student sitting in a paid-for seat believing that he is somehow better than a black or brown person sitting next to them because he's thinking that they're there because of affirmative action, taking up one of his white counterpart's spaces, only because his trash mama said he should never know. So he goes through life believing somehow he does have meritocracy. He does have somehow an advanced level of intellect, etc. And it's when we kick the legs from under that crazy table of white supremacy, then they will have to compete on a level playing ground, and most of these clowns would never be able to compete
And they're
if
angry.
it was a level playing
And
field.
let's keep
Angry
in
about
mind,
that.
Stand by. I'm on standby.
I'd be angry if somebody lied to me too.
Stand by. I'm going to speak from a personal perspective. Picture it. The year is 1996. Can you imagine it? Some of y'all young people. I auditioned
Let's not date each
for
other
my
here.
college program, a Bachelor in Fine Arts. Okay? That's what I auditioned for. And people thought that I got into my program because I'm black.
That has been
Absolutely.
my entire life. Only because
But
you're
nobody
black.
paying attention to the fact that my ass dope.
That
okay?
your talent is there. You have talent. You have
Picture
talent.
it. Picture it. Picture it. 2008. That's not that long ago. Was when we had our first black president, also half white. Ayo. I went to graduate school. I had a full ride. And people said to me, you only got that ride for your master's in library and information sciences. Y'all can think about that. Because tú hablas español. Tú hablas español porque tú creciste hablando español. Guess what, bitches? I ain't Latina. I'm black and I learned Spanish as a second language.
All right. Say that.
Porque con esa cara, because with this face, I had to learn to speak Spanish. And I'm gonna be real, I'm gonna keep it extra real. It was very hurtful to me that people didn't think I belonged or that I deserved my scholarship. They didn't think I deserved it because I, quote, grew up speaking Spanish. That's real shit. I'm dropping that on you guys right now because that's the real truth, is that people think I didn't deserve that. It didn't matter that I spent X amount of years working in underserved communities, that I was an AmeriCorps volunteer, that I spent my whole life attempting to like F up. Oh, I can't believe I said
Right,
that.
because that was an advantage that you had over private tutors, private school, money to change the SAT scores. That makes you
That makes you only there
because
was
of.
only
But
there
I got
because.
here.
Well,
the
take
way
it
I
to-
got
take it
here,
up
and
to
we ain't gonna
2019.
question that.
Take it to 2019. Now, imagine growing up in a community that had historically embraced you, looked like you, felt like you, etc. And then people start looking at you saying, you don't belong. What are you doing in 5 Points? What are you doing on the north side? Where did you come from? And why are you here? Because now this is my space, and I'm going to call law enforcement that will somehow now show up when they didn't show up. Now you're on speed dial, And the next thing you know, you're explaining yourself in front of a judge why you were in your very own community standing on the corner.
Yeah. I don't need to imagine it because we done had the popo at our house.
As the only black family in Stapleton, you're officially the black family in Stapleton.
We are.
The police rolled
Which is kind of messed up when you look at us.
I was there.
She
it
was
went
there.
down.
Five cop cars rolled up on my house because I have a Black Lives Matter sign on my lawn.
And you want to know what? I can promise you, when they saw you all initially going to move into the neighborhood, they were like, "Oh, they're the good ones. They're the lighter complexion ones."
I'd be like, "Shooby-doo-doo,
they're the good ones." Yeah,
Shooby-doo-doo.
that's how they do
Don't
it. Well, we can
arrest
let
me.
them in because they're the lighter ones, so they're the more acceptable. And they saw y'all put that flag up and was like, "Oh, hold up."
Call the police. Black Lives Matter.
They tricked us.
And you know they sent a black officer. It was a mess. Please tune in to the podcast for that story. But I do want to talk about Aunt Becky. You know, guys, my name's Rebecca, but it's a K-A-H. Don't call me that. Don't call me that. But I want to be clear because we're getting tight on our time and all that. But I want to talk about, if you are in the audience right now, if you heard about how Aunt Becky from Full House was part of a conspiracy to get their white children into colleges, raise your hand if you heard about that.
Is it bad that I felt a little I felt really bad, but when they showed up to Felicity Huffman's house, they were like guns loaded, ready to go, locked. Which, okay, one, I will say, why? It was a money scam. But at the same time, I mean, hell, if she was black, they'd have did the same damn thing. So I was living for that moment when they showed up like SWAT team, all the guns, like, sis, come outside or we gonna start firing.
But the response is so funny because it's the same when 45's partner, the attorney, you know, they tossed his house at like 6 in the morning. And I was watching the news feed. They were like,
For
"Did they
paperwork."
They could have just called him and he would have showed up." I'm like, that's how this works. They show up 6 in the morning trying to catch a brother when he's yawning.
They give them a time limit. Like, hey, yo, if you could turn yourself in by this time, that'd be great.
I was just like, did they toss the house? Did they kick in when you come home? You're like, damn, y'all didn't have to do the house like this. They was probably admiring like the furniture. Like, that's nice.
That's
The
nice.
dusting and all that. I'm like, please.
No,
Toss
but
that
that's why
house.
it's important to remember that type of racism affects us all. Not just black people, and we can be like, ooh, look how they did them, and I can go back to my comfy home. They will roll up on you like that if you continue to allow such behavior. It's inevitable.
She could come out like Black Lives Matter.
Word.
They showed up to this woman's house, guns blazing, like she gave up government secrets. And a small part of me was like, that is unacceptable. But then I had to and then that was me having that moment that society trains me that you don't attack white women. You don't do that. That was disrespectful. But then I thought about, I was like, if Felicity Huffman was black, they probably would have put her in a chokehold. So the fact that they showed up to her house, yup. So the fact that they showed up to her house, just showing, hey, we got guns in case you resist, was still a very nice gesture.
Check them body cavities on the intake. I mean, it could be real humiliating. She'll never be the same.
I feel like Highland's over here like, we not ready for this. We not ready.
Bend over and cough.
But it's important to remember that type of behavior affects us all. If you allow it and look the other way for one community, best believe it's coming for your community next. You can't say it's okay to do that on that side of the tracks.
I'm
It's coming for you
legit
next.
looking at you.
So while you're comfy, while you're watching it on TV, believe it's coming to your
coming
front
next
door
for you.
unless you say something.
Word.
But that's how the privilege works. I mean, you had the owner of the Super Bowl winning New England Patriots in the trap house.
Lord.
You know, getting that little rub down. They dropped them charges, I heard.
Of course they did.
I'm
Like,
sorry.
nah.
This is not appropriate, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it. There's a Chinese foot massage spot, Federal Vitality. That shit legit. Ain't nobody slaves in there. I want y'all to know you can go there and get a good massage. And there's nothing suspicious
I hear you.
Corey,
up
keep
in that
that in
bitch.
mind.
But
We need to
if you're a
check out
billionaire
that
getting
spa
$5
massage.
massages, there's a problem. It's like,
Right, because you could just have somebody come to your
I'm
house.
I'm packing, and I'm cracking. I'm packing. All right. So the only other question I wanted, it's not even a question, it's just a statement. Are you ready? Here it go. You can pay hundreds of millions of dollars, XYZ, to get your child into what is considered a fantastic university. And the question is, how is that different from what Aunt Becky did and all of these white rich celebrities did, paying their money underground? How is that different? It's called a donation.
I was about to say, when you're poor, not poor, but when you're not a celebrity, like known status, it's called they called it a donation. Like, hey, that's why those parents have like their names on the library or the track field. Those are donations, and there's no difference. It's all wrong, because if you train your children that to be the best, it's all about academics and learning and doing what you need to do to get there, then it's a complete lie, because it doesn't matter if I'm rich and I have the money for the donations, then my kid's gonna get that place. So it's still wrong. Whether you're donating or you're just paying to lie and say my daughter is on the lacrosse team, it's a lie and it's wrong.
Or a different race.
Thank you. Or a different race. Did you see
that? Was found
there was a
that
woman
they
from
were
Connecticut.
They were checking a couple different
Yes!
race boxes to
The
help
woman
with
in
that
Connecticut got caught for
affirmative
saying that
action
her
piece.
daughter was an indigenous person, full fucking white.
I thought you had I thought you had a presidential candidate that was checking off that Native American box.
Lord, keep me near the cross.
Honey.
But
It's-
that is
it's
the
wrong.
issue. Is it is wrong. And how about let's talk about who the hell done watched Full House in the last 15 years? If that chick is able to pull up the financials for getting her daughter into an Ivy League, what are we even thinking about how deep the rabbit hole really goes? I mean,
how
Becky from
dumb.
Full House. Becky from Full House got caught.
How dumb.
How much money does Becky from Full House
No, but
got?
I'm being serious. How
There's
dumb
so
is her
many people
fucking
with
kid
so much money and
that
clout.
she can't go to college?
I'm looking at Trump. I'm looking at all his kids. I'm looking at everybody who got
And
more
not to
money than
mention-
Becky. Because if Becky is paying to get her daughters into college,
It's
you
been
better
happening
believe-
forever.
Right.
It's been happening forever. And not only that, but it makes me really upset because these are children who don't even want it.
They don't
These are
care.
children. Like,
They don't need
okay,
it. They don't
here
care.
it is. I'ma say it. I'm a trash ass human being. If I grew up in a wealthy family, if my mama would have came to me like, we're gonna pay for you to get into Harvard, I'm like, bitch, save your dollars for my Cancun trip.
But
All
see,
right.
they know how trash that is because they wanted it to be a secret.
Exactly.
They want their
Like,
child
please
to
don't
walk
waste,
around.
Please don't waste your money,
believing-
honey, and please don't waste the space.
They know
'Cause I
they're
would much
trash.
rather have someone
know
more
they're
equipped in
trash.
that position than to have me, who has been rich since the day I popped out of your womb. I don't care nothing about a university. Give me my connects. Give me my trust fund and let me go on about my business. And not waste the space for a child who has been working their entire life. These
That's
are
it.
Ivy Leagues. Ivy Leagues are not supposed to be something you're paid into. That is supposed to be their whole integrity, is that your academics, your education, your drive is supposed to get you there. And the fact that y'all are letting people pay these fake children to get into it when children really work. Okay, I just finished reading the autobiography of Michelle Obama.
Uh-oh.
And my God, I always loved my forever first lady, but I ain't never know how much of a nigga my motherfucking first lady was until reading that book.
All right.
And it upsets me because it could have been someone's privileged fucking white child who didn't even want to be there, who got her spot. Fighting since elementary school to be the top of the top. And I'm, again, not just for children of color. There are poor, impoverished white children who work their asses off. So I think that every single parent that's suing should get every single dollar.
And you should be the defense lawyer.
Absolutely, because if
Do that.
I'm telling my child that your education is your way out of this trailer park, out of the way of this ghetto, out of this hood-riven life that I could never see for myself. If I'm telling my child that you getting all A's will get you where you need to go, and then some simple bitch like Aunt Becky
From Full House.
pay for her child who only cares about, my eyeliner looks amazing today.
Oh my goodness.
We not getting
You know we in
invited
love
back.
down here on
You
this
ain't
end.
got no business
Shoot.
there. And how dare you take the spots of children who deserve it. This country needs to be taken over by people who give a shit. And these adults and these parents, these celebrities are only just enforcing this bullshit that the circus peanut has in office right now.
Boom, motherfuckers!
I'm sorry, I get upset. Because I am in a position where I'm teaching my niece, who is only 4 years old, reading at an 8th grade level, that, girl, your education is gonna get you so far out of here. And to see this bullshit on television, so when she works hard and she gets stuck in a
They'll
community
tell
college.
her affirmative action.
Listen,
Boom.
affirmative action.
Affirmative action, reading
You
in
just
8th
got
grade and
How's up
4th
in
grade.
here?
Okay, stand by. Give me.
Nothing
Sure.
else needs to be said.
Miss Henderson also speaks a little Japanese. So, chotomate kudasai.
Affirmative action didn't give her that.
All right? Yeah, it didn't. But I will say that one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I was like, listen, y'all, we know we ain't getting invited back to there. We know. We already know.
That's why I ate like a pig
we
right
were like,
now.
we were
'cause
eating.
I'm pretty sure they didn't
we
want
were
to let me come
drinking
back.
up this juice. We were letting. Oh shit, them's my notes.
Nah, these good folks, they want you back.
Stand by.
Truth
All right.
is good for the soul.
No, but this is like a real thing I wanted to talk about. Are you guys ready? You ready? I want to talk about something that don't come up typically in circles where white people be at. You heard me. I want to talk about reparations.
I quit.
No, everybody give their ideas about reparations.
No. So stand by. So there's something going on, and this is something I think is really important, and that's why we talk about it, is there's a group called ADOS. It's African Descendants of Slaves and their reparations. I'm going to jump in real quick because I'm a facilitator, I'm a connector, I am who I am. I don't like ADOS because I feel like they're trying to divide us. They're trying to determine. ADOS is African Descendants of Slaves. So, for example, if you are my husband, he look white and shit, but he ain't. Just so everybody know. And his
Which I just
daddy.
want to highlight for all those ignorant people who don't think that black people come in different ranges
All
and colors.
shades.
Please look at Rebecca's
I have a daughter
husband.
who's light as hell. People be speaking to her in Spanish. She be
Hola.
like, yo, I understand, but I'm
We
black.
are all across the board.
So I'm just saying, my husband is of Caribbean descent. He is Jamaican, right? You ever heard of the Caribbean? You ever seen that shit?
Check his curl pattern
So
if you
check
think
it.
it's a
You can
lie.
check it. You can check that curl pattern.
that curl
It's legit.
Just by a show of hands, how many of you believe that Africa is the birthplace or the cradle of civilization? How many of you believe everybody came from there?
That's
Then all
science,
y'all
bitches.
black.
I thought
All
y'all
y'all
would like
black.
some
Everybody,
science.
all y'all got
Everybody
some
black.
other. We
Everybody
all.
from Africa.
I heard someone describe herself as a pale African descendant.
That's why 23 and me calls so much, because they don't
I'm
want
a
y'all
pale
to know.
African descendant.
They don't want you
I'm
to
like,
know.
you're right, girl. That is
Hey, you're
correct.
black. You black, you black, you black. You don't even know about
Yeah.
All right. So I'm off on my tangent.
You don't like ADOS?
I don't like it because I don't like the idea of separating Africans who came out of Africa and who were slaves in the United States of America versus AKA I don't even know.
Africans who just got here.
What's
Africans
wrong with
who
that?
just got here. So I'm trying to say, like, the question is, and I'm pretty sure, I'm not gonna lie, I got like 3 white people sitting in the corner here. They look good. I like them.
Here we go.
They're gay as hell. They know what's up. They know what it feels like to have some kind of discrimination upon their bodies.
But LGBT is not the new black.
It's not the new black.
That's very clear
See?
for me.
So that's a whole other conversation.
Which
said no,
I'm
so it's
not
fine.
gonna
It's
lie,
fine.
as a queer black on the panelist, I just recently talked about this on the show, how intersectionality is a real thing with the black community. Absolutely, girl, we gonna talk afterwards. Absolutely.
There's some unity shit up in here. Okay.
Well, I could take the other side of that. I appreciate ADOS. And let me tell you why I appreciate ADOS.
We're going to duke it out.
Well,
My man speaking.
We're just being very specific. So, for example, say that you were the victim of a particular crime. And you came forward because you were going to be compensated or made whole because of that crime. And as you are preparing to receive the compensation that would make you whole, somebody jumps in front of you and says, hold on, everybody should get some of this money.
Precisely.
Everybody, whether they've been criminalized or not, there's enough for everybody. So let's dilute it and just give everybody something. So when I think of American descendants of slaves, the first problem I had with the name was slaves.
Ew.
Now, but that was the first piece. But then I listened more deeply in terms of what they're saying. I'm talking about the content as opposed to the title. Because I know that when you talk about slavery, some folks are enslaved and some consider themselves slaves. That's a very real difference in terms of identity. But what this organization is saying, as it relates to North America, I'm not talking about the diaspora. I'm not talking about Jamaica.
Stand by, motherfucker. Are you including in the stand by? Because I'm gonna push back because that's my style.
Don't come for my man.
Well, it's
I'll come every goddamn day. Are you including Mexico in North America?
Well, first of all, let me finish my point, motherfucker. So, as I was
Y'all see
saying,
why I love
I'm
him.
talking about very specific. This organization is talking about reparations. Reparations for what? Reparations for American enslavement. They're not talking about reparations for Jamaican enslavement or South American enslavement or even enslavement somewhere else. This organization is being very specific, talking about a very specific people who did a very specific work and were criminalized and dehumanized in this place, in this time. They're talking about them, not saying they don't appreciate other people, but they're talking about in terms of who should be made whole for the work they did. It was them. Not the person who just showed up yesterday or the one who showed up the day before or the one who's going to be coming. So when they say American descendants of slaves, they're being specific to a time, to a place, to a crime. And if they're advocating on behalf of that group, I appreciate that. They're not saying, and by the way, we don't like Jamaicans. And by the way, we don't like folks from the Caribbean. And by the way, we don't like folks from the islands. They're talking about a very specific situation, a very specific set of circumstances. And because they're very, very specific, I have to appreciate the work that they're doing. That's my point.
I will not disagree. Because I never disagree with shit where I'm like, word.
How can you disagree with Brother
I
Jeff?
can't disagree with that. And because I'm honoring Dr. Diggs. And we're gonna need to acknowledge what happened in those colonized places, aka Jamaica, aka Turks and Caicos.
That's another argument. That's another discussion.
Another argument, but stand by because it's my
Jamaica
show.
and Turks and Caicos and all of those countries need to come to atonement with.
But spoiler alert, come over here, mamacita.
Look, I already see my next guest for the podcast. She ready to talk. Yeah.
Because my great-grandmother was born a slave.
Come.
And my indigenous relatives deserve
You look too cute
something
tonight,
now.
you showcase.
I don't know what it's going to be,
I
but we
know.
definitely deserve something before we have to share with everybody.
Ben,
And
ben,
why-
ben, 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 ben.
Hi. Hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Está bien? I don't know if she's speaking Spanish to tell you that there's some connection, but I speak Spanish too. But I'm saying that Black Americans deserve their payout before everybody else. Before everybody else. Why is the Black community always burdened with inclusiveness when nobody else is inclusive? It doesn't make sense.
The Japanese received reparations based on their internment right here during World War II, I believe. Should I be in line as well to get Japanese reparations based on the pain that they went through and the crime that took place to them
Not to say
as
that
American citizens?
it wasn't valid, but
Valid.
But what we're talking about is how we mix up this conversation of race when we discuss reparations. We're not talking about race in as much as who were those who were victimized and who were those who were subjugated as it relates to that particular history. So reparations is more of a legal challenge as opposed to a social kind of how we get together.
I'm gonna jump in if I may. Just kidding. Sure. I jump in whenever the fuck I want to. Gracias, hermana mía. Lo siento lo que está pasando en Venezuela. Estamos preocupados por ya sabes. Okay. So, I am pro reparations. And I feel like that freaks white people out. At the end of the day, it freaks white people out. But I'm just trying to let you know, and I feel like I offer it in a very concrete way, that even though my husband, his father, not a descendant of American slavery. His daddy not a descendant of that. My daddy is a descendant of that. How much do we get looking the way that we look? And that's a conversation that I personally, from my background and blackground, I appreciate. Because, like, how much do I get? Because I had a black daddy. My great-great-grandma was a slave.
You get equitable distribution.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, because it's not as if your grandmother or your mother did not go through a lot
you get equitable distribution.
Of backlash.
And the problem is...
Because it's not like she got to be with a black man and go, I get all the privileges and the awesome estate of my parents after this because I'm white. It doesn't matter.
My mama was disowned by her family.
I was about to say, a lot of white families disowned those in their families who dated outside of their race. And it wasn't like I disagree, but I love you, Rebecca. No, it was a, bitch, I don't know you. As long as you dating that nigga, I don't know you.
There you go.
So.
And I think we got to have this discussion if we're going to do the colorism, because the two of us on this end and you and your husband, if he were sitting right here, none of us would be more black or less black than the other based on the complexion of our skin. Nothing discounts you from saying, I'm not black, I'm less than, or you're more than. That is just another divisive conversation that keeps us fighting.
Keeps us confused and fighting with each other.
And missing the mark. So blackness is a conversation usually in the U.S. Like the sister said, she didn't even know she was Afro-Cuban or whatever until she got here, because that's some American stuff that they put on. But when you were home, you knew exactly who you were.
Community trumped everything. It didn't matter what you look like. We got to get together and make what we live in what's right.
So we're not going to play light skin versus dark skin black.
No, we not.
If you got hit by a car, we all did. If you got bit by a dog, we all got bit by the same dog.
So that's what I'm looking for. And as we kind of try to wrap it up in here, I want to be very clear. That we are here for community. And we are here to support each other. So if you are perhaps one of them old white gentrifiers, just something for you to think about. If you are perhaps a person from El Caribe or from South America, that is something for you to think about. Okay? So I want to be very clear on that I'm not here to build divisiveness. I'm not here to make people feel uncomfortable. It's like I'm ready for people to feel uncomfortable.
When you're uncomfortable, you grow. That's where growth comes in. That uncomfort is where growth happens.
And that's part of the facts. That's part of the facts. So I just this is kind of our first time doing this show like this. We're trying to go around to other venues in Denver, places that we feel welcome. And there, that's the name of this restaurant. I got some problems with the name because it's a little bit confusing.
I actually love the confusion. This is my kind of spot. Where am I going? There.
Yeah, I'm going
What's
to there.
You know there.
I want to be clear that I do want to let people know, our people, that yes, you're welcome here. And yes, we're going to work on this. We're going to have these kinds of conversations. We're going to push through it because this is a city that we all are living in, right? Don't you want it to be a beautiful city for your children or your friends' children?
Yes. Absolutely. And it will get there. Absolutely. These conversations.
And that's why I'm constantly pushing that shit.
Keep on pushing it.
I'm going to push it all day and all night. Brother Jeff, when can I come on your show again?
Anytime.
You say that, but when I'm like, I'm right downstairs,
Anytime.
you're like, oh, no.
Anytime. We gonna hit this up. This is only part one.
All right, as we wrap this up real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and give a shout out to myself. I'm working on a film right now. I'm a filmmaker. My film is called Running with My Girls. It is about women of color running for local office here in Denver, Colorado. If you don't know, March.
You better
I'm
make
ignorant.
yourself aware, honey.
May 7th is our election date here in Colorado. The candidate I'm supporting and making my documentary about for the mayor of Denver is Lisa Calderon.
All right, Lisa.
That's a Blaxican. What up, Corey? Okay, so I'm supporting her for various reasons. You can check it out. And what else? I'm drunk. Okay, so I want to shout out the bartenders up in there. And I don't want to make this be about race. Psych, everything's about race. But I want to shout out to Oren. Oren is an Afghani Israeli. Where the fuck is it? Half Afghani, half Israeli, out here in Denver serving the people. And I fucking love that. Bro, Jeff, give me your website real quick.
BrotherJeff.com.
I like it. Monty Taj.
ComfortablyExcluded.com.
And if you're black and you happen to be listening to this and you got some shit going on, Brother Jeff got Saturdays.
You got Black Dollar Saturdays at Brother Jeff's. If you are or have a friend who has a black-owned business, you can come to Brother Jeff's on Saturday morning and set up shop and sell whatever it is that you have to sell as a black-owned business for free. Black-owned business vendor free space at Brother Jeff's on 28th and Welton every Saturday.
Is the half-black person welcome there?
Are you black in America?
We don't do a bag test. You just walk in.
Shout out, motherfuckers! So I wanted to present this. There's a book out right now. You can pop by the local library, which I won't talk about it. But we got our Little Denver, Little Black book, which is black-owned businesses in Denver, Colorado. And one of them, wait, if you...
Be a better neighbor, that's
How can you be a better neighbor? This is it. You shop at these businesses. And I'd also like to give a shout out. This is about to be... Are you ready? May I? I'd like to give a shout out to Stories Not Forgotten. You guys don't know what that shit is, but if you want to take a look at my Filipina fucking camera woman, Trish, give her some shout outs.
She's the bomb.
Trish comes into your home, records your family stories, and basically essentially makes a documentary about your family's life with pictures and the best stories. And I'm gonna keep it real. Y'all, people might feel like, oh, your family gonna live forever. They not. Me and my husband both got dead mamas, and we are very well aware of that. And so we want people to know that you should record your stories. And Stories Not Forgotten does that. If you mention off color and you want to hire her, you about to get 20% off All right. So that's the word. This took a slightly longer than we thought it would. But that's why we black and stuff. And white James. And anyone else need to add anything before we wrap this bitch up? Ooh,
Yeah.
yes.
Song.
Yes, okay.
Stars in the sky, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Breeze drifting by, and you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, yeah. And I'm feeling good, so good. Folks get brown in the sunshine. Bum-ba-da. Everybody loves the sunshine. Folks get brown in the sunshine. Everybody loves the sunshine. Yeah, yeah. Said I feel what I feel, what I feel, what I feel, what I feel, what I'm feeling in the sunshine. All right. I'm Danette. Thank you so much.